got guests in studio today?
Yeah, we've got with us Daniel Worku. He is the director of Axum Group. Am I saying that right? You know, there's the U with the umlaut. So
yeah, that's just for style. Yeah, you're saying it right.
It's Axum Group. Great.
Yeah,
okay.
Axum Group. Yeah.
Well, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your group, and what you guys are working on?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having me on the show. I'm really excited to be here, and you guys do great work. I'm happy that you led off with news and not something else. That's really awesome stuff.
Thank you.
So a little bit about the Axum Group. So basically, we're a collective of diasporans. Right now, we're focused on the Horn of Africa, but hopefully one day we can expand. And what our team does is develop mobile technologies for the Horn of Africa. So we're programmers, business people, pretty much everybody's living in the US, Canada, Germany, or Israel. And we're developing applications for iPhones, Androids, all sorts of stuff to bring technology to the Horn of Africa.
Mm-hmm. So your team is based internationally? You're all from different...
Yeah, we're all diasporans.
So then how do you use technology to make technology? How do you actually come together considering you're far away?
Yeah, well, so the awesome thing is the internet has really lowered the cost to connect with anyone around the world. So we use Skype, Google Hangout, all this stuff is free. For programming, we use an awesome online tool called GitHub where you can share
codes.
Objective-C and this is languages that you program in. But basically that allows us to have a small team. I would say, let's see here, total it's less than 10 people, a small team. But in the last 3 months, we've already released 4 iPhone applications. We have an Android app in the works. So really everybody's passionate. So it doesn't matter where you're living, even though we're in different time zones.
Tell us a little bit about those 4 apps you've released already.
Sure, yeah. So like I said, right now we're focused on the Horn of Africa. So the first apps that we released Fidel. So both Tigrinya, Amharic, and Tigray, these are languages in Eritrea and Ethiopia. They use a written script. Mm-hmm. It's one of the oldest in Africa, dating back to about the 3rd century. So we released one app for Amharic that teaches how to read the written form. Mm-hmm. Another one for Tigrinya. It's based off the same written system, but they have about 20 or so characters that are pronounced differently, or they actually have 7 that aren't included in the other. And then also, especially important to the Minnesota community, we did an app that teaches Kube, which is how Oromo is written. Mm-hmm. So you'll know that we have a huge Oromo diaspora here. And then also our most popular app, which just reached 5,000 downloads in less than 20 days, is something called Ethiotype, which allows you to type out after you've learned how to read and write, then allows you to type out. And we have predictive texting and everything like SwiftKey and all that, but we're doing it for Africa.
Okay, so are most of these languages written then, or do you speak them too, for those who aren't that familiar with Ethiopia?
Do I personally?
No, well, I was going to ask you that next, but I mean, these languages that you're talking about, I mean, they're written language.
Yeah, well, so...
Is that what it's called, scripted languages?
Yeah. It varies. So at least with the interesting thing about the languages that use Ge'ez, which is the parent script for Amharic and Tigrinya, the interesting thing is that's an old enough language that both of these societies or both of these languages had written forms, but literacy rates were like under 5%. So it's much more similar to like Egyptian hieroglyphics, where there's a written system, but only the ruling class can read it and can speak it. And even to this day, literacy in the region is barely at 50%, right? For Oromo, the written script was agreed upon in, I believe, 91. There was actually a meeting between scholars because it was an oral language. And there were a lot of different written systems that different people were pushing for that were introduced. And they ended up going with one that's based on a Latin system. So it looks more similar to what you see with Somali, where it's Latin letters, but there might be double vowels or stuff like that.
So what made you and your colleagues to get involved in this? I mean, there's so many avenues in technology.
Yeah.
What made you get involved in creating these apps?
Yeah. So for me personally, the way I first got into it is I was trying to learn Amharic.
Yourself?
Myself, yeah. So my father was from Ethiopia.
Okay.
And even though we speak a lot of different families in the house, even though we speak a lot of different languages in the household, Amharic is kind of the language of commerce. So I wanted to learn that. But there weren't any resources out there. I mean, there were books and there were old tape recordings, but basically no one's taken the initiative to make an investment into technology. I couldn't find computer apps or mobile apps. So I was like, all right, I'm going to make one. So after I made one, then my friends were like, oh, we should download this. I want to learn it too. And then from there, it kind of evolved into calling up, my friends and family that I have in other countries and saying, hey, can you translate it into Hebrew? Can you translate it into German? And then found more family that was like, hey, can you help me program? And that's kind of how it's grown naturally.
So what are the steps in getting an app approved by Apple? Because I know they're not open source like Android is,
yes,
right?
that's very true.
Oh, right, yeah. And then also, why did you decide to start with iPhone?
Yeah. So the big advantage of starting with Apple apps is, and the iOS format is, there are only two screen sizes if you're working with iPhones, right? There's the long, kind of that Retina, that modern screen, and then there's the iPhone screen that you had on the iPhone 3, 2, all that is all the same. So an advantage from programming is there's not a lot of code I have to write. If I do it for Android, you can think about how many different screen sizes there are. There's not a standardized format, so it's really annoying. So that's kind of why we went with Apple. To answer your question of the process, so first you want to come up with a solution that an app needs to solve. So for the keyboard app, for example, there's no way to type on Android in Ge'ez script. That doesn't support the font. So then once you have that, then you have to move on to design. How are we going to get the keyboard to work? How do we want it to look? And then from there you move into the programming, the actual code, the back end of it. Finally, after that, then you have to submit it to Apple for review.
Okay.
And so it's another 2-week process, so it takes a lot of time.
I bet it does. Well, let's talk a little bit about your target market. I know you mentioned that, people, there's an East African community here. Maybe somebody like yourself, you wanted to get in touch with your roots. But what about people in Ethiopia? Are you also targeting, let's say, immigrants, maybe Americans living in Ethiopia, or do Ethiopians themselves living there need this?
Yes, yeah. Well, so that's... So basically, we're in a problem right now of we have too many ideas and not enough programmers.
Yeah, my question was just all over the place.
No, but that's we want to move in that direction. But basically, we're taking things a step at a time. Specifically for Americans who are going into other countries, we want to work on English to Amharic, English to Oromo, mobile apps and dictionaries like that. There's nothing really out there, or at least, for those two, I know for sure there's nothing on the App Store, Android or Google for those. So that's something that we can move that both people can use if you're going from English or if you're going from the indigenous languages. But yeah, it's going to take time to get there.
Right.
So how long it takes to write codes for one app?
Let's see. For the more complicated apps, it took us about 3 months. And this is with 2 people programming.
Okay.
And both of them have full-time jobs. So it really, if you have a big enough team and if you're doing it full-time, you could probably push out these apps fairly quickly. But at the end of the day, the reason why these haven't been created yet is because Google, Apple, all these people haven't seen a reason to go to these markets. They're like, oh, it's small. We're not going to get a lot of money. So the only way that they are going to get developed is people like us who are passionate about the languages and are passionate about bringing technology to this region. So hence that means, these are people who are doing it part-time on the weekends after work.
So is this, I know the app is not free. It's not free.
Depends. For the apps that teach, the educational apps that teach you how to read, the language, those are $1.99. For the Ethio type app, if you have an Android, if you have an Apple phone, you can download that for free today. And then there's an in-app purchase if you want to have other features like, being able to save new words to the dictionary and so forth. I mean, if you're familiar with like SwiftKey, we basically we like how they did their pricing model, and we're just applying it to a different language.
So do a lot of people download it for free and then end up adding on the additional features?
Yeah. Basically, we're right about at the mark for comparing to what they say you should get for people who will upgrade. They say about 1% of people that download will pay for the full version. And right now, that's right where we're at. So obviously, since we're working with a smaller community, we're not going to make a ton of money. The 5,000 downloads, you can kind of figure out from there how much we've made so far. But
5,000 times $199.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't want to do that math because I'm trying to put his income out there.
But basically, really, I mean, it makes it clear this is not something that we're going to be able to make a living off.
Right.
Most likely,
not yet.
Not yet. And even if it goes big, I mean, maybe. I mean, Ethiopia is the second largest country in Africa, so we might have a shot there. But in general, we're focused on all of the Horn of Africa, all sorts of different languages. Our goal is more about empowering people and giving them access to technology than about making a bunch of money. I mean, Apple and Google, if they wanted to, they could take us out in a week, and just program something.
But for me, the way I perceive this is now you've done this, you've set a stage where even if you have health practitioners from Médecins Sans Frontières or somewhere that goes into the remote part of Ethiopia, they could take on these applications to help them do the work,
Yeah, that's true.
Because interpretation is very key in healthcare. The doctor has to tell you you tell the doctor what's going on, the doctor has to tell you what you need, So that interpretation is very key in healthcare. That could play a huge role. I mean, that could be a life-changing event.
Yeah, I agree. There's a big potential. And the main thing is if these countries, I mean, as an American, I'm born and raised in the U.S., so I'm a diasporan, but really my experience is one of someone who comes at it from a Western perspective. So what I hope is, if these countries get to a point where people have the income to go out and buy smartphones, then I think these things will be huge because these things will be used in mass. Mm-hmm. But right now, there's still that barrier, and as someone in the U.S., I can't address that barrier to access. I can only address once you get the smartphone, I want you to be able to make that download. I don't want you to sit there and curse your phone because you have to use English.
Right. And I also think, at least in Kenya, and I've been to Ethiopia, I'm trying to remember, but anyway, in Kenya, most everyone had Android. They didn't have iPhone. So yeah, I think it would absolutely be great if you could, expand to both. But
I'm just curious if you guys ever look at the market of phones in Kenya, like what percentage had smartphones?
Yeah, that's true. So both in Kenya, I mean, Kenya is, to their credit, Kenya's done a very good job of introducing technology. Basically, there are 3 hubs in Africa for tech right now, Kenya, South Africa, and Nigeria. And if you go on a website, it's called Human IPO. Basically, it's like a website similar to what they do in the Silicon Valley, but it's just focused on Africa. So you can see all sorts of startups. There are tons of ideas coming out of Kenya. They have a lot of cell phones. You're right. The Android is about 80% of the market for people who have smartphones. But there are some Kenya would be nice to get in there. But now people are waking up and they have the education there, so they have access,
So you mentioned, expanding your app, you're not obviously going to stop here, but what specifically are you doing? Are you going to introduce other language apps, even Swahili in Kenya, would that be a way to expand by using different languages, or what are your exact goals?
Yeah. So Swahili's on the list to do, Somali's on the list to do, Arabic's on the list to do. Basically, like I said, we're focused on the Horn of Africa because that's the group of friends I have.
That's a familiar territory.
Yeah, that's my territory. So when I was asking people who can help me with this, that's who I have. But if you go on my website, or actually I should say for the whole collective, if you go on our website, Aksum app, AXUMAPP.com, if you contact me and you're like, hey, I speak this language and I want to get an app in it or something like that, get in touch with us because we'd love to do anything. We'd love to go all over Africa. But like I said, the main problem right now is we don't have enough help. We just have too many ideas.
Good problem to have right now. Too many ideas. Yes.
But we were talking before we got on air about now you're talking about language, about Kiya brought up this little thought that some people were talking about, or people have been talking about having a one language,
a Pan-African
language that represents the entire continent. And right now, I guess it's interesting to see what your view is, since you in this business of
working on languages.
Languages.
Right.
I mean, so personally, I don't really have a strong view on that. I think if we look at other continents, there's a variety of languages that people speak, but usually like whatever becomes the language of trade, that's not regulated. I think, in places like South America, where the history of colonization was basically by only Spain, there's a reason why there's kind of, Spanish is a uniting language. But I don't really see space for a Pan-African language. But I think what's more important is the ideals of Pan-Africanism need to evolve. A big problem that the entire continent faces right now is neocolonialism.
Mm-hmm.
We have more countries that are gaining independence, but the resources and the economies are more dependent on Europeans than they were 50 years ago.
Right.
So I think a big problem that countries across the continent of Africa need to work on together is addressing those economic inequality issues, who owns the major corporations. Those are a big deal that I think we can work on as a continent.
Now, have you been to Ethiopia before?
No, I'm actually
Shame on you.
Shame on me. Well, so now that I'm getting the language, I've been studying for about 4 or 5 months. I have a plan to go with some friends next winter.
You've gotta.
Yeah, so that I have to legitimize myself, right? I'm sitting out here telling you to like download my app for free, but
I think you're still doing a very noble job.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think that's what the diaspora is about.
Yeah.
People come here with this concept of we can live just like we did back home, but in the West. And the reality is your children will change, you change. While you're here, what it means to be an African in the diaspora is very different than what it means to be, an African in your home country. So that means not everybody's going to go home. I'm all for diaspora and kids getting involved in U.S. politics and staying here and making their history here.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're changing.
Mm-hmm.
That's part of our experience.
But my question to you is, with technology making the world smaller and smaller, as you said, you have coders in different parts of the world, and you guys write your codes and communicate.
Sure, yeah.
Did you see yourself at some point, if it was possible or feasible, living actually on the continent and still doing what you are doing now?
I would love to. Okay. I think that'd be awesome because I'm really passionate about this stuff, and there really hasn't been a lot of attention or investment put into it. I said how we have those 3 big countries in Africa that are working on things, mm-hmm. but still they don't have the same kind of innovation that we've seen in the Silicon Valley, in India, and in other countries with information technology. So I would love to eventually work there. The main question would be the advantages that I would receive, mm-hmm. because like you said, technology is lowering the price of access. Yeah. So I can, when I go online, I can see that, for example, Kenya is the 5th place in terms of our top sales. So I know that, over 1,000 Kenyans have downloaded my app, and I haven't stepped foot in Kenya.
Right. Amazing,
so the main question would be, if I go there, what do I get that I can't get here? Because I'm an American boy, and I like the system we have going here.
Right. That's good. But
right?
I mean, it's amazing. I really do appreciate, especially young Africans or diaspora, if you call, that come here and get involved in technology or whatever that we can do to make an impact back home, or to have a better representation of who we are. Because
thank you. Yeah,
I was just in a conversation last night with some people, and people are so easy to categorize. You Africans, or you African Americans, or you white people. And I was saying that there's bad people, there's good people in every sector. You just can't generalize. But for me, I think it's always a good thing when you can see a young person, first generation African, second generation, that come to the States and really take advantage of the opportunities. Yeah, and I think you're doing that very well.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you. And I hope we can have more people like you. that
Thank
can really
you. I
take
hope
advantage
so
of
too.
it.
Yeah.
You know, because we need our own Silicon Valley in Africa soon.
We're gonna have it, and if we don't have it, I mean, other people are gonna take it. If you're sitting at home right now and you think, oh, you know, I can kind of program, I say go for it.
Yeah.
Do something, because Google and Apple and all the other monopolies are just waiting to take you over.
Yeah.
If you don't do anything, so you go for it.
Yep. Kai, do you have any other question for our guest before he wraps up?
I guess we'll ask him any final comments. I mean, touched on a lot of things. It was
I'm happy that we kind of touched on a lot of different things. Thank you guys for having me on. And yeah, if anybody wants to get in touch with the Aksum group, go to our website, axumapp.com, Aksum app.
So that one doesn't have the 2 dots above the U.
That doesn't have the umlaut. No.
Not every keyboard has that, you know.
The umlaut actually, I'll let you know a secret. The umlaut is actually like to pay homage to my German ancestry too.
Oh, look at
that. Okay.
But you know, when I was making a little posting on Facebook, I was like, okay, so all these little characters, dots. I don't have that on my keyboard, but I try to represent this as close as I can. But Dan, thanks for stopping by.
Thank you very much for having me.
We appreciate it. But don't worry, you will be back. It's an order. You'll be back.
All right.
Because I'm so very proud of what you're doing. I would love to have you back so we can talk more.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. This is FM 89.9 KMOJ. We are the People's Station.